in the web browser. And I move my mouse over the VNC session in the web browser, and I can sort of remote control this machine on the other side. So I launched an application. What I can also do is I can upload a file. So let me see if there's, yeah, here's some screenshot from a debugging thingy from another project. So okay, and we can see here's the file. And also on the other computer, of course. Yeah, this LibreOffice launch I shouldn't have done. Okay, so let's just click that away. Yeah, so the file I just uploaded.
I just noticed this LibreOffice launcher coming up. Was that because the file upload dialog?
No, I clicked it in the application menu. I wanted to demonstrate that I can remote control the machine. I clicked in the browser.
Okay.
I clicked here in the menu, and then something happened in the VirtualBox machine.
Gotcha.
So okay, these controls. So the what is used here for getting the remote desktop here is VNC, of course. So we have on the local machine we have X11 VNC, which is a mirroring VNC X11 to VNC application that opens up a VNC server to the outside. We pipe that through WebSockify and whatnot, and we use NoVNC, which is a JavaScript-based VNC viewer, to see what's on the other side of the VNC stream. So, and then we have, as I said, we have a bidirectional communication protocol. Well, let's say some sort of communication. The protocol really needs to be well defined still, but it's possible to trigger events on the Django web app side, but it's also possible to trigger events from here. So what I can also do is I can, for example, this is pretty simple, but I can finish the remote support, and this doesn't kill the X11 VNC on this side. It tells the Django web server, the web app, to actually stop this sharing, and then I should see that on the other end. So the disconnected comes from NoVNC, but yeah, this logout action has been triggered by the client on this on the local machine where the support was running. Okay, so the live demo worked. Any questions about that?
So we have a little bit more than 3 minutes left for your talk. So I guess you should explain a bit how what the future plans are for this.
Yeah,
like how do we get X2Go Classic with NX libraries, and how do we get X2Go K-Drive integrated into this?
Yeah, okay. So the main problem is actually funding. At the moment, my working situation is I can only nearly only work on projects that I can generate funding for, and so this is something that's definitely needed. And then we could do anything. So before I go into that, while setting up the test setup last night, I thought, my God, we have so many Python dependencies and so many Qt dependencies and so many. So the number of packages that tumbled in while preparing the setup was quite ridiculous. So this is something that needs to be looked at. Whatever we do with it, we need to shrink the dependency footprint. But we could, for example, replace the NoVNC viewer by a JavaScript-based X2Go car drive client, and this is not really science fiction. It's something that exists already. I have the code available in my mails from Alex, but I did not come around to testing it yet. But that is definitely something we could do. We could also wrap VNC around X2Go sessions running in NX libs. So that would be a workaround for us not being able to get and X11 based sessions directly into the browser. So that could be an option too, so that we change X2Go server in a way that we have a VNC desktop sharing mode, and then we could at least hook into already existing X2Go sessions. So we can, whenever an X2Go session has been launched on a machine, we can connect to that and move that into the browser session. And we could then also go steps further, that we could launch X2Go NX agent-based sessions headless in the background and attach the X11 VNC server to that, and so that you don't have to launch the X2Go session from a normal X2Go client, but get that basically script launch on the server directly and then attached to the browser-based viewer session. So we could this web UI could also become a admin controlling thingy, or also user controlling thingy for Python X2Go broker-based environments. So that could be another way to actually drill it up. It could be an admin UI for X2Go session brokers, so that site admins can monitor whatever is going on in their X2Go server cluster. You could definitely combine the remote IT support tool with X2Go functionality. So there might be use cases where people work on X2Go in X2Go sessions all day, and they also have need for IT support. So that would be a nice combination then to provide. And what we also have been thinking about regarding the remote IT support thing is that you could attach multiple Django servers to this desktop app that launches or that triggers the remote support, so that if the first level support is really clueless at some point, they can say, okay, I can use the same tool now to get another supporter from the second level or third level support onto the same machine or the same X2Go session, and sort of have.
So it's remote support technicians all the way up.
Yeah, exactly. So normally you have, if you have a TeamViewer session, then and the first level doesn't know how to continue, then the second level takes over. But you could also have something where the first level says, I'll get someone from second level in, and they both stay on the same session, so that the first level learns from the second level, and maybe next time can handle things by himself, by herself, by themselves. Yeah.
Okay, I think we're already past your allotted time frame. So thanks for the presentation.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll have a chance to see you live in like a few days, a few weeks for a smaller meeting.
Yeah. So we'll. Yes. So if people are interested in that, and if maybe, I don't know, maybe
because usually we would have a Q&A session right after your talk, but since you're not available today, we should probably do that in a few days or a few weeks.
Yeah, if there's need for it, get the people together, and then we can sort of make up an arrangement, and then we can sort of do a Q&A after the gathering.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. Okay.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Okay, so this was the video, and since Mike is available, he can take questions now. I see that someone wrote something in the chat. Let me check.
Mihai, in the chat. Yeah. Hi, Mihai, by the way.
Okay, so Chris Greenshields wrote thanks in the chat.
Okay.
So wait, let me turn my camera first.
Sorry, I thought I forgot he I forgot it was recorded, and I thought he was disappearing. So then I was like confused. I forgot it was recorded. Sorry about that. I couldn't tell the difference between reality and
it was so relaxing watching my own talk without having to do it. Really, it was so nice. And actually, I expected my family being back by this time and standing in the kitchen and preparing dinner. So, but they sort of there was a time shift here, and so I could actually watch myself doing a talk.
So we have 5 minutes left for your Q&A. I'll just check IRC if someone was watching there and asking questions there, as well as the YouTube channel. And we'll have Mihai start his talk by 18:50. So Uli gets 10 minutes extra.
Yeah.
Since he asked for it.
Okay.
Mihai, can you give me a quick microphone check?
Yeah, does it?
Okay,
Yeah, it
works.
does work. Okay.
Good. So let me just correct one thing. There has been funding available for doing this web thingy, this remote web app project, and there is, and we didn't arrive at a place where it's actually something X2Go can use already, but it's something that we can build on top of and make it available for X2Go. So when I said it needs funding, I especially meant to make it really production ready. It will be a lot of work with work focus needed on such a tool. So that was to be more clear about that part of the talk. Okay.
All right. Any further questions? Because the IRC channel and YouTube channel are empty, are void of questions. Anyone here? Okay, then just a quick break, and Mihai will start by 18:50.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Yeah, I'll just as a side note, I'll hang around here until 7:15 about, so I can. Mia, it's you who's doing the next talk, right?
Yep.
Okay. And then I'll say goodbye, and I'll watch you on YouTube sometime later this weekend to catch up. Yeah. Thanks for being at the gathering virtually and being interested in X2Go.
And while we're still on break, I guess I should point out that I'll put links to all the recordings and slides and everything into the wiki as soon as I have them uploaded somewhere. And here we go. Mihai, it's your turn.
Great. Okay, so let me tell you something about Reminar and X2Go integration. So before we start, let's talk about Reminar really quickly. Reminar is a remote desktop client for POSIX-based systems. It's plugin based, so that each protocol can be used via a different plugin, but it also has a uniform UI for basically like everything you want to do. So you don't have to teach users new concepts when using remote desktop software. It's reminiscent of the TS client, terminal server client, that has been once shipped within GNOME, but fell out of grace, I don't know, like 10 years ago, something like that. So I guess that this is the continuation of this effort. TS client basically was only a fancy UI that wrapped around programs like our desktop or VNC clients and other stuff. Remina does have support for quite a few protocols, one of which is NX, also SPICE, XDMCP, SSH directly for X11 forwarding, VNC and RDP. And we'd like to have another plugin for X2Go sessions, because X2Go sessions and NX sessions, while X2Go uses NX internally, they're not the same, and they can't be spawned, just easily. Okay, and this is why, this is one of the reasons why we came up with the libx2go client. So libx2go client is a library that is supposed to, a client-side library that is supposed to eventually maybe even replace the SSH implementation and the session handling stuff within X2Go client. But the nice part is that we can also use it as a basis for the Remina X2Go plugin once it's really ready. It's supposed to be written in C, based upon glib and gobject. So basically you get all the asynchronous stuff, well, not for free, but mostly for free. And most importantly, we don't want to use other libraries like libssh or libssh2 because they are never really up to date when it comes to protocol support, but rather use OpenSSH directly. So we just take the OpenSSH client and wrap it around. We create a master connection and then multiple channels however we need it. That sounds great, but it turns out that, well, OpenSSH is buggy too. Anyway, so this project has been going on for the past 2 years, I guess, or 1.5 years. Last year, I've already had written up a parser for different connection types, because you can essentially have OpenSSH connect via IP addresses or DNS names or even shorthand for hosts. So far, we can open up a master connection, which is periodically checked. I've written small testing applications that uses the library internally in order to open just one connection and wait for 30 seconds in order to close it up again. And yeah, and we also have a check that makes sure that the master connection stays alive. Right. This wasn't easy because for once, OpenSSH is buggy. Normally, when you start, well, not normally, but when you start OpenSSH with the control master and control persist options, it should open up the connection, authenticate, then fork off a process, and this process should then close stdout and stdr both, become the master process and controlled via Unix sockets, and the main process should actually continue executing whatever program or command you've given it. And that works. And there's been a bug report around, like 2 years ago that was fixed because it didn't close stdr correctly. Now with the F flag, the client can also daemonize, that is, just detach before running any command. And that is interesting if you try to run X11 forwarded programs or stuff like this, or if you don't care for keeping the program, the SSH program open indefinitely. Unfortunately, this flag has the side effect of basically sidestepping the fix that was implemented for the control master and control persist operation, which means that that stdr in the child process stays open, stays connected to the controlling terminal and to the controlling library, and we cannot detect whether the program actually stopped and detached, so forked into background basically, and then the original program just went away, or whether the child is still executing, because both programs are connected via the stdr pipe. I've had to debug this quite extensively and came up with a solution. Basically, we just check whether OpenSSH has this bug or not, and well, either close stdr or leave it running. But that also meant that I will have to parse the version number of the OpenSSH client and introduce a new bug quirks infrastructure. So far, we have only one quirk, which is the stdr not closing thingy, but it's extensible to other quirks as well, because well, OpenSSH isn't perfect, and even internally, it does have a list of quirks that can be used to work around, well, bad behavior in older clients or servers, or interact properly with those buggy clients and servers. Now, I could optimize it further, but I didn't have time for that because I also had to write up the whole master connection thingy. So that's something for later, maybe. Now, after we've actually spawned a master connection, we also have to make sure that it stays alive and detect whether it just went away or not. Now, usually you could say, well, don't fork it into the background, and you could be doing that, but then you'd have to spawn it into a different thread and synchronize that as well with the main thread. And the biggest problem I've had with that is that if I keep the main process running, it's easy to detect when it actually disconnects, but it's also impossible to connect to really know if it was actually spawned successfully. So I said, okay, let's just have it detach and continue from there on. Which meant that I needed to write up another periodic check. Now, the easiest way, just spawning a main loop and a timer or timeout in glib parlance, didn't quite work out correctly because, well, it's a library and you don't want to hook the main process, basically. So what I've had to do instead was to make this all threaded, create a new thread, launch the main loop and context and timer or timeout in the new thread, and I've currently set it to run every 3 seconds and check the connection status every 3 seconds. But that may not be good enough. Well, eventually, after debugging everything, and I want to have it run every 50 milliseconds, and that's fine. A static value may be fine, but I'm not quite sure if a static value is good because, well, basically.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but Matt asks via chat, is there already a bug report file to describe this OpenSSH issue and possibly a suggested fix that would work for the Reminar integration? And your camera or your screen is glitching.
It's glitching?
There we are again. You're back.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's supposed to glitch. Just let me.
Oh, and by the way, halftime mark.
Yeah. No, I'm just looking this up. There's a bug report right here. So that's a bug report that I've written, but nobody actually took action on that. Right. Well, it's not a big bug. It's not a huge bug. We can easily work around it, but I just have to update the version numbers every now and then, or just rework that. Yeah. So, but okay, but basically, a static, check timer value is okay, because what the check timer does is just connect to the local Unix socket of the controlling master process and ask it whether it's still alive. Well, check whether it connects and is still alive by issuing a ping or check message and expecting a reply. But that may not be good enough, because basically what we want to have, or what we get for free if using the OpenSSH client, is additional features like Unix socket forwarding. So that's a great thing, but if you continue going down that road, you could imagine that maybe the master connection is not actually running on the local machine, but on a remote machine, and we just forward the Unix socket. So even if to the local machine, the Unix socket looks like a local one, it may not really be one, which means that maybe we have to make this timeout or timer dynamic and find out the round trip time or anything like that. But I haven't done any of that stuff. It's just in my head and written up properly in a comment. Good. Now, further on, yeah, I want to continue the implementation. I want to well, having a master connection is nice to have, but I really need channels. So I really need ways to spawn other commands and stuff like that over the master connection, and I haven't at all done this yet. So that's one of the things that needs to come next. Also, we don't have any support for real sessions yet. I need to define the session format and data and objects, but it's going along. And other things are also missing, but we now have a basis, and it's at least it's working for what it is supposed to do. Just issue an OpenSSH connection. And yeah, I guess I'm done with the talk as far as I've got it.
Okay, that leaves a little bit more than 5 minutes for your Q&A. Any questions? Uli would like to speak. So,
Yeah.
Uli, unmute your mic and speak up.
Okay, Mihai, as I've understood it, you implement that OpenSSH stuff into the lib X2Go client.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be, have you thought about an approach that you write a replacement lib for libSSH that is maybe even AP compatible, that only does the OpenSSH stuff and not any X2Go stuff?
Well, there isn't one. It would be nice to have something like that, but it just doesn't exist, and you'd have to implement it within OpenSSH itself. I mean, as far as I know, there have been there has been interest in implementing something like this, but I don't think that it ever really worked out, or nobody actually did it.
So that was your chance.
Yeah, well, in theory, but it's more complicated than that.
So in fact, we had this discussion earlier to actually have the X2Go specific part in one library and have an SSH wrapper library on the other end, and then bring those two together, and that's then lib X2Go client sort of. Yeah, I wonder if it's still an option, because Nito wants to come in, he says. Just let him in. So I wonder if it's still an option to actually split out the OpenSSH wrapping part of the code from what is X2Go specific at the end. So what could come from that is that other people who want just wrap around OpenSSH in a C program can benefit from the SSH wrapper library, while they don't have to, they don't see the X2Go specific parts.
Well, I don't see why this shouldn't be possible. Right now, we don't have any X2Go specific stuff in there anyway. So it's just the OpenSSH wrapper.
Oh, so you can just rename the library and then we're done. Okay.
Basically, yeah. Well,
yeah, maybe
it won't do anything great.
Yeah.
But maybe.
Yeah, maybe please do that. Because I think having a C library that can handle OpenSSH really well is something that's needed on in the free software world.
Yeah, maybe. Well, we could do that. I mean, I'd rather not do this right now because I have other stuff to do on the X2Go client front, and it would take too much time to. Well, it's not really too much time to split it out, but I'd have to find a way to link in another library and use that, and I don't know. I just don't want to do this right now. But basically, the idea behind libx2go client also is that you can have multiple ways to communicate with a server, right? Because you can use SSH, but you can also use like a TCP socket if you want to. If we finally decide that we want to have a real X2Go protocol.
Nito would like to chime in. Nito, just unmute your microphone and speak up.
Oh, okay. No, just as a feedback on that side. In QVD, what we've done, our communication channel is HTTP. Okay.
Yeah.
So what we wrapped basically was the core, and inside that we use the MX libraries, and there we found out some bug of running out of
file descriptors.
File descriptors in X2Go, but that's fixed now. So we reported it back, and that was fixed. But so it's basically we used a different transport level, and then hook that in. So just as an option, perhaps it might be. I know it would be really difficult to get all the other bits and pieces out there, but basically we hooked a different transport level and then used the NX channels to do all the other bits like sound and bits and bad like that. Just as a hint, information so that you can digest it.
Yeah, because we have already implementation for TCP sockets within NX.
Yeah.
Basically,
Well, just for your information.
Yeah. Okay, but yeah, the general idea is to not have one way to connect to an X2Go server, but a plugin based implementation too, because
but then you even more need the really X2Go specific handshake session stuff, X2Go run command launching, whatever, in a completely different library, and then what you're working on now needs a very specific API interface for these two to interoperate, and then we can actually drop and kick out the libSSH wrapper thingy, and then have a libTCP wrapper or HTTP, whatever protocol we might actually use, and then but the X2Go specific library always sees the same API no matter what the protocol stack, and be it what layer in the TCP stack, be it. So that would be quite interesting to actually
have another question from Matt in text chat here. He says the bug for OpenSSH was logged months ago and hasn't been assigned. Is that project pretty slow? Is there any other way to motivate them to fix that?
I don't know. I guess the OpenSSH project is pretty slow to respond to any bug report because most of them are difficult to actually reproduce and stuff. In that case, it isn't, but not many users actually need the things that we are doing here. So it's probably, I mean, if I were to ping them on the OpenSSH Devil mailing list, they would probably look into that. But I haven't done that because it's really not such a big deal in the end. It would be nice to have it fixed, but it's not a deal breaker.
Yeah. Whenever it gets fixed, you put that version into your workaround thingy, and then and until you can work around it, and you need to become aware when you don't have to work around it anymore, and then it's fine. It's
the only information that I lose is whatever OpenSSH client writes on stdr, but normally you shouldn't have a lot of data on there.
Yeah, Another comment from Matt. Thank you. It is hard to know how much effort your workaround is taking versus getting upstream to fix.
Yeah.
I don't think it's really a big issue to fix. I mean, it's difficult. I don't think that it's difficult to fix. I think it's rather easy to fix because you can just close the file descriptor in question before doing any work. They just haven't done so, basically. And you also have to make sure that you don't close the file. I'm not even. I don't remember what I've written there. If it makes sense to keep stdr open in the general case, if you're not using it with the master connection. But I think that even then it doesn't really make sense because you just want to have the main process detach and that's it. On the other hand, maybe you want to have information that comes via std are from the program that you launch on the console. So, well, or the terminal. So anything goes.
Yeah. But in general, I think Matt is right. Some projects, with some projects, you really have a hard time upstreaming bug fixes, and with others, they are so responsive. For example, the Remina developer, that's mainly one person, and I guess a second one in the background. They are highly responsive and open to suggestions and have time for questions. They don't have so much time looking into your pull requests when they don't work. So that but yeah, and with projects like OpenSSH, I guess they have a packed bug tracker anyway with open bugs, and we are not responsive to all the bug submitters either. So yeah. We have in fact quite a few patches pending in the bug track at the moment.
I know.
Mia, any estimation how long it might take to actually get a very simple X2Go session handshaked onto screen?
I don't know. It may take another year or so because it's really complicated to do this correctly.
Yeah. I mean it's
well, when I first started, I really had to wrap my head around how glib and gobject works, and I had to implement everything there. And once I've got it skeleton and understood how it works, I could go on and implement stuff. Also, I implemented stuff that actually will never be able to use because, for instance, I wanted to have OpenSSH connect to an anonymous Unix socket. That is Unix sockets. No, abstract Unix sockets, right?
Okay. Kernel abstract Unix sockets.
Kernel abstract Unix sockets. But it turned out that you can't actually, well, at least from a shell, you can't give it such a name because it starts with a null character.
Yeah. You can't.
And you can't even do this. So I've written up all the parsing for it, but you will never be able to use it actually. But that's how it goes.
Okay.
So from your point of view, wouldn't it make sense to redesign the X2Go protocol so that your library can establish a session much easier?
Well, eventually, yes, maybe, but not right now because that's a task for a lot more time.
Yeah. And at the same moment, it is something if you have this SSH wrapper thingy, and you have the X2Go library in a separate thing, and you're not stuck with QD5 anymore because that's what makes the client so bulky, and so you can in fact then start thinking about another implementation of a remote desktop protocol, which is incompatible with what X2Go is doing, but maybe more, much smarter in maybe utilizing dburs and maybe a session service in the background and a GUI that connects to that service, stuff like that. So, but that is really reinventing the wheel and should not be part of the libx2go client project.
No,
really.
It's way too complicated. But eventually, I mean, I'd like to have something like a real server running on an X2Go server-based server, whatever. So a real service that listens via TCP or Unix sockets or whatever and communicates with the client directly without having to spawn connections via OpenSSH.
I think it's time for you to leave. Don't get in trouble with your family.
Yeah, I know. I've noticed. I'll head.
So one more thing I would like to mention. I think adding those quirks is unavoidable because from my experience, you have to depend on SSH versions that major distributions ship, and they might decide to implement that bug, that to backport it, or even not. So you need to find a way to come up with that version and handle that.
Yeah. And even that, if it's really, well, it's difficult to even apply a quirk to a patched OpenSSH version, because so far I'm just checking the version directly, right? And I know that it hasn't been fixed yet as of OpenSSH 8.4. But if some distro manages to fix it, I won't be able to really detect it because I cannot know what they've done and how they're calling their OpenSSH library client. But yeah, in general, we need that infrastructure anyway. So that was something that I had to do anyway.
Okay, so we've extended the Q&A into the break so that Mike still had a chance to use his 5 minutes. But now we should take a quick break before it's time for Uli's talk.
Okay. Okay, so I say bye. Have a good evening. And some of you I meet back on Sunday morning, maybe.
Enjoy your dinner.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, it seems like we've lost Mihai. I don't know if he intends to come back. Indeed, he does. There we are.
Good. Oh, okay.
Okay, things are looking good. The live stream is still running. So as soon as the clock shows 1920, feel free to start. Ah, your microphone is muted.
Maybe better to activate it.
Yeah.
Makes sense, yeah. Okay, 2 more minutes. Time for a quick off-camera shake, wiggle, wiggle.
Hey, Stefan, it's Chris. I was just looking at the timings on the schedule. Is there like a mistake on there?
Let me check. I updated the schedule, so you might have to reload it.
Okay, I'm only asking because it's fine by me, but I think it goes 1920 to 1950 Uli, and then it goes 1930 to 1940 10-minute break.
Okay, let me just check that. The idea was to move Uli's talk up a bit, so he has like 10 minutes more for his talk. Maybe I messed it up somewhere. Let me check.
No, I was just letting you know. It's fine, but it's no problem for me.
Totally fine. Uli, you just start your talk in 1 minute, and I'll check the schedule while you're doing your presentation.
There's a break amidst my my schedule, so that's the problem.
Yeah, I'll fix it while you're present.
So my clock shows 20. Let's start this. As I told before, I haven't done any pre-run, so I don't know how long it will take. If it take too long, well, then I'll stop. Now, last time I was reporting the changes that went into 3.5.99.22, and now I report the changes that got implemented from there on. Don't expect too much because, well, I'm a lonely fighter at that front at the moment, so I'm the only one adding any code, almost the only one. So all depends on my mood and my time. Let's start with the fixes that came into the code. They are rather small most of the time, and most of the time you might not even notice that that special bug ever existed, but it was fixed. While while coding, I tend to recompile the code instead of starting a complete build session in a clean directory. So I had its strange bugs, and it turned out that the build infrastructure was simply broken. If you made a make a second time, it linked with the wrong libraries. So we fixed that. Then a long time ago, the logging code was introduced in NX Comp Shed, and obviously nobody ever tested it because once I activated it, the whole code crashed. That is fixed. And I found the problem that reconnects were impossible in some cases. You had a session and there was no way to connect to that session anymore because some internal checks did not include a special situation and prevented the reconnect totally. The only option was to kill the session. That is now also fixed. And then I found some code that didn't get some macro definition, so it compiled some old buggy code, included some old buggy code instead of the right new code. And it caused crashes that happened in real life. So we had 2 bugs of that and we fixed them. Then again, as every year, I had some work on the clipboard. That beast still haunts me, and it's still not working perfectly, but it's working much better. And together with Stefan, I will address some problems tomorrow and hopefully fix them. Then there are some realloc bugs in the font code. I don't remember exactly what the problem was, but it needed fix, of course. And if you pass special arguments, not really crafted, but just in some special order, it made the code crash. Also fixed. And I discovered a mem leak in full screen. So if you switch to full screen regularly, it will eat up. It would eat up some memory every time. No longer. Then I discovered that atom handling. X11 has atoms pointing at strings, and these atoms were handled wrong at some places. This is due to our system is compiled in 64-bit and the original code was 32-bit, and on 32-bit it was not a problem, but on 64-bit environments this was simply wrong, and it probably would show up at some mixed environments where you had 32 and 64-bit applications at once. Then the NX code has some key conversion feature that remaps keys in certain situations, and that key conf handling was not perfect because it activated itself on reconnect sometimes, and then you as a user had almost no chance to get this fixed again. So you had a broken session where some keys. Yeah, sorry.
I'm not sure if you were gone or if my connection was gone for a moment, but I had a screen freeze and no audio from you for a few seconds. Could
anyone confirm?
It was okay for me.
I cannot confirm.
Looks okay in Seattle.
All right, please continue.
Okay, so you had no chance to fix that in a reasonable way as a user, and the only way was to kill the session and start a new one to get proper key handling again. And then we had some funny bug, caps lock weirdness. When you hit, I think it was Control Tab or Alt Tab, you could switch caps lock, and this wasn't really fixable from the user side too. The next one is also about reconnect stuff, where some options were lost. Options from the options file were lost during reconnect. And the next one is my favorite fix, because on reconnect, on startup, sorry, it took several seconds on my system where I just start the NX agent from the command line. I had a delay of 9 seconds, and on other systems this might even be longer, and that was all tied to parsing of XPM logos. I dropped them completely and two bugs in that. The one was that we had some XPM logos for X2Go and X on the disk, and they had to be read and parsed. That reading was broken and never used, but the parsing was the main problem, because it really took ages. So I optimized those images and put them into the code, and now it's a blink of an eye and it's done. And I found a lot of stuff where variables were overwritten by other variables with the same name. And I fixed almost all of them. So you don't get too many surprises while coding. That was one part, that's what it fixes. Now we have the cleanup. As you can see, I have worked on 192 files and did a lot of changes. Even reduced the number of files we need. Most of this was code simplifications, where you could write some code in one line instead of 3 or 4. And scope improvements means moving variables to inner loops instead of defining them at the start of the code. Then white space fixes in the code. And I discovered, while doing the above stuff, I discovered lots of unused code parts and dropped them. And previously we had doubled a lot of Xorg code and activated that instead of the original Xorg code, because we had some changes in them. And I reworked that whole system to reduce the number of lines that we have cloned, and try to call the original upstream function as often as possible and do our changes around that code. And then I found that we still have an Xwin support in the code. And Xwin was a window manager that No Machine provided on the Windows side. As our code cannot compile on Windows, there's no sense in keeping that code. We never compiled NX1 from our code base. And then I streamlined some functions because they had some unused parameters, and they had some return codes that nobody ever used. Okay, and here's again the broken support for icon files, so logo files on disk. I don't know if that is readable for you or it's too small. I just did some statistics about the code. As you can see, I had some reductions, some notable reductions, about 3,000 lines of code that got dropped. Now, apart from the fixes and the cleanup, I also added some enhancements.
There's a question by Matt. Hold on. He raised his hand. Matt, speak up, please.
Hi. I was wondering, this is maybe a stupid question, but I know that there was another project like Arctica that was also doing NX cleanup. Could you talk about this effort and that effort, and how I can think about those two projects and what their differences are?
When I'm talking about NX, I mean Arctica NX.
Ah, thank you. Okay, I'm clear.
Some years ago, the X2Go people decided to move the NX Labs code into an external project and depend on that project. So there is no NX code that gets updated in X2Go without Arctica being involved.
Thank you for clarifying. I'm clear now.
Okay, where was I? Yeah. While restructuring code, while cleaning up, sometimes you discover stuff you didn't know about. So I found some undocumented parameters we can add to the NX call that never found their way into the man page. And so I added them. Even if I didn't understand them 100%, but what I could find about them, I wrote to the man page. For example, you can limit the size of I forgot. Copy size is the name of the parameter, and I forgot what it did. Please look it up on the man page yourself. You can now. Then, because of repeating clipboard problems being reported on the X2Go user mailing list, I added a keystroke where you can dump your current clipboard state. So this helps a lot in finding situations where the clipboard doesn't work anymore. And eventually, I will also add some code for resetting the keyboard, the clipboard, if it stops working. Then I discovered that we have long passed our release dates for NX Labs 3.6 or even 3.7. So I removed them from the README. And the whole code base was designed in a way that it simply exits when you close the session. And I added some machinery that cleans up the resources the code allocated, because that's the way it's supposed to work in Xorg. And NX is nothing but derived from Xorg. The next is also about Xorg machinery. There was a lot of code that did stuff where Xorg simply offers own mechanisms you can simply use. So many of these are the callbacks. So you can register code that gets called at certain situations, and you don't have to patch it into existing code. Much cleaner, and it saves a lot of lines. Then when you compile in some debug support, you now see in many debug messages, you can not only see the binary ID of a Xorg X11 client, but you can also see the name and even the parameters if it's run locally. That helps a lot when debugging, because you don't have to search who was issuing a command to NX, and it's just mainly for developers. Then I constantly found myself on the X2Go mailing list to tell people to use the latest binaries, because their special bug was already fixed there. And it turned out that it's not so easy to find where those binaries, those nightly builds are to be found. So I added them to the README. And while working on code, I constantly improved the debug messages that are included. And finally, we can now compile with GCC 10, which revealed a lot of a lot of code that is not clean. So we were forced to fix that code. The earlier GCCs didn't detect those problems. Then next is splash screen code, the X2Go logo you see when starting up the NX. This was overly complicated and scattered over a lot of places in the code. I moved it to one place and reduced it to way less lines of code and way less X11 calls. So that's just better and quicker, and the logo is now centered. Some time ago, I added the NX dialog binary that is used for as a replacement for the No Machines NX client. The original NX client had several functions. One was to present you the dialog for starting up a session. Another one was to simply show messages, like the remote server has disappeared, closing session, or something like that. And while NX Dialog was part of the codes for some time, it was not used by X2Go or not used by NX Agent by default, so I changed that. I think X2Go is still not using it, but pure NX is now using it automatically. Next is when you are using the timeout option, which will disconnect the session after some time of inactivity. You could not use the screensaver inside the session because the screensaving code was misused to implement the timeout option. I dropped all that